What's up, everybody? It's the Power Rankings Podcast, aka the Power Rankings Show. I am your host, Elliot Harrison, and I'm joined, as always, by Marcus Mosher. Who Marcus, you guys don't realize that every time we do the show, we kind of sit here and we talk a little bit, and I usually try to talk about something interesting. Marcus pretty much just bags on whatever I'm wearing, or he says I'm wearing the bad guy in a bad guy in a movie sweater.
I would say like a bad guy in a college setting, right? Like you're the preppy kid that beats up on the bully, right? Or the little weak kid.
I look like my name is Chaz.
Oh, or Chad. I think you're a Chad.
Yeah, Chase. Well, if you name your kid Chase, I feel like you're really hurting them from birth. But
and I'm probably like the Poindexter in this one, something like that.
It's because of the 80s movies. Chase was ruined. But wasn't Chaz the name of what's his name? Now I can't think of the guy who played Johnny in Karate Kid. Gosh. This is so bad.
This is a great start to the podcast right now.
William Zabka, yes. So if you saw Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield, Billy Zabka played Chaz, and he was like that dude who picked on Rodney Dangerfield's kid in the movie. Of course, Rodney Dangerfield's kid kind of deserved to get picked on.
He
was also in a Stephen King movie called Christine, where a car comes alive and chases him. I don't know if any of y'all ever saw Christine. I would put that number 88th on my Halloween watch list.
I would say for intros to Power Rankings Show, this is like at number 1500 of whatever we're doing. This is not great.
Totally fair. We are ranking the teams today, as we do every Tuesday around this time. One little hot sports opinion, fresh out of the oven. Ready. Usually I let Marcus do this. I tweeted last night and got some responses for it being such a late tweet. I was actually surprised people were awake and paying attention. That there really are no great teams in the NFL right now. There's not a single team in the league that I see that I think, man, that is a great football team. This is a team that you could put up with other Super Bowl champions. I think at this point, no one has any idea who's going to win this Super Bowl. And you can argue, I think, Marcus, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. How do you see that?
I think it's a great thing, actually, because there's a lot of times where these seasons just feel kind of pointless. Like we have an idea who the final four teams are probably going to be. You can normally guess 3 of the final 4. And we kind of know the contenders and the pretenders. I love that we have 20 teams right now, Elliot, that think they can win the Super Bowl this year. I think that's going to make for a lot of fun over the next, 7-8 weeks of the season.
This is why I told you we really need to get off my lawn Gran Torino sound effect, because on one hand, I agree with you. On the other hand, I'm the get off my lawn guy that thinks it was better the way it was before. So the part that I agree with you is it definitely makes the games and the playoffs more interesting, given that we don't know who's going to win. It could lead to a very exciting postseason. On the other hand, upsets became exciting because there was a quality team that everyone wanted to knock off. If the Empire sucked, then nobody would care if Luke Skywalker blew up the Death Star. If the Empire was just kind of like a mediocre empire and they didn't really run everything, and their Death Star didn't really work. Yeah, but if their Death Star didn't work and Darth Vader tried to do his chokehold, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, and against the cruddy generals it worked, then no one's going to care if Han Solo and Luke Skywalker knock off the Empire. So I guess what I'm leery of is 2 things. One, that we're going to get 2 teams in the Super Bowl, neither one that we can point to and say those were clearly the best teams in the league. I'd like for at least one of them to be a top tier team. And then I don't necessarily want to see the 2011 Giants win the Super Bowl again, which is something I told you the other day. I will defer to you, though, on the point that it does make for excitement when you really don't know at week 10 or 11 what it's going to be.
I'm not worried about it, because I do think once we get into the playoffs and once we get to like the divisional round, it'll be all the usual suspects, right? It'll be all the teams with really good quarterback play, because we know that's what translates to playoff wins. Is the regular season a little bit more random than we're probably used to? Yeah, we're probably not going to see a 16-1 team. We're certainly not going to see that. We're probably not even going to see a 15-2 team, and that's okay. I kind of like having 7 or 8 teams going into the playoffs that think we can win it. I think it's fun.
That's fair. That's fair. We're going to get to this in a second, though, because we're going to talk about some of the great teams. Let's start at the bottom like we always do. Let's start with the Houston Texans. They had a bye. Not much to say there. They're playing the Titans this week, Marcus. We'll pick that game on Thursday. Maybe you'll do a 8-team parlay with Houston somehow coming up a winner by you sliding them 10 points in one of your, I don't know, trigonometry gambling
teaser.
things.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah. Your 8,000 team teaser. Not a lot to say with the Texans. Not a lot to say really good for the Jets. They've given up 45 points the last 2 weeks. They've given up more than that if you count 3 of the last 4 weeks. I think they've given up 175 points in their last 4 games. It's a mess right now, and the legend of Mike White didn't go so well.
Yeah, Mike White mania is dead in New York. It lasted about, 2 weeks? Yeah.
A lot less than Gardner Minshew mania lasted for Jacksonville. I'll tell you that right now.
That's true.
So, as bad as he played and as ugly as the Jets are, I don't know that I've seen an uglier fourth quarter or overtime in my life of watching football than Lions Steelers.
That's why I'm shocked that you have them at 30, because they still haven't won a game yet. And they looked atrocious on Sunday. I think they had 35 passing yards going into overtime in that game. I think they're the worst team in the league by far right now.
I usually don't move the bye teams. I also try not to respond to 1 week. Now, of course, you can make the point that
they got blown out by Philadelphia last week.
Yeah, let me go ahead and overrule myself now. The Lions. By the way, I think this is so funny. People are saying, "Hey, the Lions could be the first team to go 0-16-1, not just 0-16." Yeah, and they could also be the first team to only have 1 playoff win in 63 years.
Jeez, Elliot,
a fact.
You think Detroit fans are already heartbroken enough? You don't have to bring that stuff up.
It's a fact. Do you know the curse of Bobby Lane? Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yes. One of these, maybe on our Friday pod, if you remind me, I'm going to tell the condensed version of the curse of Bobby Lane. So remind me, because it really is a great story. It's a phenomenal story with a lot of moving parts. I've got to tell that one. So Lions at 30. The reason I did that is because they stayed in the game. I thought their defense did admirably well. Their offense was absolutely atrocious. The Jets can't stay in anything right now unless it's garbage time. Miami Dolphins got a big win Thursday. I would tell you that Marcus and I went over that game on Friday, but we really didn't.
Nope, we didn't talk about it.
It was so ugly. We didn't really talk about it. I give kudos to the Dolphins for sticking to what works without they didn't outthink themselves, Marcus. They stayed with what they were doing on defense and asked Baltimore and then begged Baltimore to beat them, and they couldn't.
This is the Miami team we were hoping that we were going to see all season long, like playing a lot of these really close games, just rely on your defense to get stops when you need them. It's just unfortunate that we haven't seen it until November, because I think they're starting to turn the corner at least a little bit.
We think it was 1 week. We'll see what happens with Miami. They have lost some close games like to Atlanta this year, but I still don't trust the Dolphins at all. The Jaguars, I almost wanted to move the Jags up.
They're playing better. They're playing better.
They are playing better. So they moved down 1 spot this week. Here's the thing. They got down, I think it was 17-0 in the first quarter, and Jonathan Taylor had over 100 yards rushing in the first half. Yeah. But they clamped down in the second half. I watched a lot of that second half game, and I tell you, Jonathan Taylor didn't have holes to run through. They came back. They had a chance at the end of the game to go down and win it. They couldn't do it, but they are playing better.
Trevor Lawrence needs to be better, but my goodness, can we get him some help? Laviska Shenault seems like he drops a big pass every single week. Jamal Agnew is a former defensive back playing slot receiver for them. We need to see the weapons be better from Jacksonville. They want to start winning these games rather than just staying in them.
I think the same could be said for Matt Ryan and the Falcons. Now, Matt Ryan had an awful, awful game, but the Atlanta Falcons as a team were awful. Ryan, I think, 9 completions for the game?
0 third down conversions for Matt Ryan.
Would you agree that this might have actually been the biggest shocker of the week, just how much they laid an egg, or at least one of the biggest shockers? I thought this was going to be a pretty tight game.
Yeah, I mean, we both thought it would be closer than this. We thought it would be Dallas would win, but probably no more than a touchdown. Yeah, I think Dallas just jumped on them in the second quarter. They scored 29 points and that game was over. I think the lack of speed for Atlanta on both sides of the ball was alarming. That's not something we're used to seeing from the Falcons. So, yeah, certainly surprising.
Also surprising, the Carolina Panthers, they go into Arizona, they stomp them. That game was out of reach for the Cardinals. A lot was made of Cam Newton, and I'll say this. Go ahead. You're shaking your head.
It's just he scored a couple goal line touchdowns, which he's always been really good at doing. The problem with the Panthers is Carolina or is Cam Newton going to revert back to what we saw in 2015? Because if he's not going to solve their quarterback problems.
No. I have such mixed feelings on this. On one hand, when he was screaming, "I'm back," I was like, no, please no. Like, I want to root for you, man. Because, and you might say, hey, what's wrong with that? Because if you scream, "I'm back," and then the next week you're a dud, then you're just bringing more heat on yourself. But I was so glad at post game when he was vulnerable and just you could tell he was emotional. And then what he said about, he was eating cereal last week. I was like, yes.
What kind of cereal do you think Cam eats, by the way? I'll say Honey Nut Cheerios is what my guess would be. That's my personal favorite.
You know what I'm going to go with? He's got a lot of pizzazz, as you know, dressing. I'm going to go with Cinnamon Toast Crunch. That's
a good one. Yeah, I like Cocoa Pebbles. It's maybe my favorite of all time. But we should power rank cereal sometime.
Yeah, and in I want to stay on brand that I ruin all our sponsorships. Cinnamon Toast Crunch, totally overrated. Cinnamon Life was way, way better.
Speaking of Life cereal is always really good. That's one of my favorites.
Phenomenal. Anyway, just the last thing on Cam. I was just really glad to see him just say, look, this is how I was feeling. I think the more that you can see that athletes are real people, you root for them. He was just playing around saying, "I'm back." I just don't want him to be doing the Superman thing and then next week, go 8 of 24 for 103 yards and then all this, heat again. Washington football team took a lot of heat off of itself with a big time performance against admittedly a banged up Tampa Bay team, but that takes nothing away from the win. What really sealed it for me is I think I almost said it. I didn't. The Washington football team had 19 play drive to close out this game. It kind of reminds me of when back in not too long ago, when you had a running back like Marion Barber or someone who could close out the clock by just, in fact, John Madden called him the closer. I love that Washington was able to do that and put this game away.
A costly win, though, because Chase Young, their star defensive end, out for the season with a torn ACL. Their other defensive end, Montez Sweat, is on injured reserve with a fractured jaw. I just wonder how much longer that defense can hold up over the next, 2 months.
By the way, my dad called the Indianapolis Colts the Baltimore Colts for like 22 more years.
Yeah. I mean, we're still hearing people say the San Diego Chargers.
So I know it's going to happen. It's hard. I apologize. Okay, let's go to the next batch of teams. By the way, if you're watching along Brinks TV on YouTube, I'm trying to drag down to move the list. And I keep forgetting that I have no control of the rundown. But I keep wanting to do it. Maybe it's because I'm an 80s fraternity bad guy, according to Marcus. I just want to control everything.
Technology's not your strong suit. It's bullying, the weak.
Nerds! All right. Okay, Broncos at 24. So I was pretty high on them after they beat the Cowboys, and I was pretty low on them this week. I've been a little herky-jerky with this team, partially because I don't know what to make of them. Philadelphia played very well in this game. We will get to the Eagles in a second. A lot's being made, Marcus, of the Teddy Bridgewater not making an effort on Darius Slay's fumble return. What did you think of that?
I mean, it's a sports guy right there. He owned up to it, but I don't want my quarterback making tackles like that anyways, because we saw Baker Mayfield early in the season get hurt on that exact same play, and it's really derailed Cleveland's year. So it's not worth it. I'm okay with it.
When did we start saying there's a bunch of football sayings that I really want to get into also on Friday that we say now, like route concepts instead of routes,
pre-snap motion.
Oh yeah. When did we start saying, I don't want my quarterback? Like, for example, with Cinnamon Toast Crunch or Cinnamon Life, I don't say, I don't want my cereal getting soggy after I leave it in milk. Nobody, when did that start? I
I
don't
don't
want
know.
my Egg McMuffin looking that way when I open up the wrapper.
I want my team to establish the run, Elliot. There you go.
Yeah.
How's that for a cliche?
By the way, when this running back runs for 100 yards,
Oh my
this
gosh,
team
stop. It's like nails on a chalkboard to me. Yeah.
By the way, that play with Teddy Bridgewater, Melvin Gordon got stonewalled. It was a great play by the Eagles defense. That team earned it. The Broncos did not look good. We'll get, like I said, the Eagles in just a second. The Bears at 23, they were on a bye. I'm trying to remember who the Bears have this week. Let me take a quick look.
They play Baltimore.
They do. They play Baltimore Ravens. How about that? In Chicago. Boy, doesn't that just sound like an ugly game? Like really ugly.
I think it's one Chicago could win, though. I think there's 6.5 point underdogs in that game. We'll talk about that tomorrow, actually. Doing a little bit earlier show this week. But I wouldn't be surprised if Chicago wins that game. We spent too much time with the Bears.
Both quarterbacks run for 100 yards in that game.
Yeah.
Okay, Philadelphia Eagles at 22. Speaking of Jalen Hurts, he's looking better. And boy, what are they getting from their rookie wide receiver? I mean, the Eagles, you know how much draft capital? You're such a draft guy. Didn't they spend 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick in the last 3 years in the wide receiver position?
Yeah, and even more than that. So they've drafted Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. They spent a second-round pick on Dallas Goedert, a fourth-round pick on John Hightower, fourth-round pick on Quez Watkins. So they've spent a ton of ammunition on that position, finally starting to see some of the rewards from it.
That's right. I think Quez Watkins had a big drop in this game. But my point being that Devontae Smith looks outstanding. I know you're not going to put him over Jamar Chase in terms of young wide receivers in the league, but fantastic. you got to be impressed with him. And just looking at Jalen Hurts' numbers, 16-23 for 178. Now that may not set your heart aflutter, but I love the low attempts. Marcus, he was only sacked 1 time, 14 rushes for 53 yards. And how about Jordan Howard getting 12 carries and Boston Scott getting 11 carries? I love that the Eagles are running the ball.
Running backs don't matter. Just go establish the run. Doesn't matter who you do it with. Jordan Howard's a perfect example. Moving on to Seattle, Elliot.
Yeah. Moving on to Seattle. By the way, I have my computer actually set up so I can look up things. I've always been having to go off of memory on this podcast. So if you heard some really impressive stuff, be more impressed. It was my memory. Yeah. Non-humble brag. Of course, I messed up enough stuff too. Seattle Seahawks. So there were some calls that went against them in that game. I noticed a couple Packers folks were frustrated with Pete Carroll that he didn't acknowledge enough that it just Green Bay beat him. It's a defensive slugfest, but it was also a game where we saw 2 rusty quarterbacks, I think.
Yeah, Seattle's defense has been pretty good this year. I think it's a little bit surprising, but Russell Wilson was just off. And you could tell that his finger's still not fully healed. We're getting to some critical times for the Seahawks because if they don't start winning some games, they're going to be completely out of the NFC wildcard hunt. That was a tough loss.
Given the state of Seattle's secondary coming into this season, I'm really surprised they've played as well as they have. Pittsburgh's defense has been all right. They lost TJ Watt in this game. Their defense kept them in the game late. Their offense couldn't do anything. Of course, Mason Rudolph had to play in that game. But right now, without Ben Roethlisberger, and I know you don't really think a lot of Ben Roethlisberger. Anyway, TJ Watt hurt. I think 20 is the right spot for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't think you can move them up because of a tie against the Lions, right? I think it feels right moving them down to 20. I still have a lot of questions about this team going forward.
I almost jumped Philadelphia ahead of Pittsburgh. I would have had Seattle 22, Pittsburgh 21, and Philly 20. I need to see a little bit more from the Eagles at this point. Let me tuck my mullet into my frat guy sweater. Excuse me. All right, number 19, the Saints. So if you didn't watch a lot of that game, I did. That was the game. That was the game in the early window that I, in fact, watched the most. And, I'm telling you, if you haven't watched the Saints, it's easy to say, oh, they should play Taysom Hill. Trevor Siemian has not been a problem for this team. He's actually acquitted himself pretty well. If you saw the end of the game, they needed a 2-point conversion to tie the game. He put the ball right where it needed to be. The play call was odd, but Mark Ingram had a chance to make the play. He couldn't make it.
Yeah, in case you guys didn't know, Elliot is also Trevor Siemian's agent. So if you ever need to reach Trevor, just let him know.
I'm just going to keep saying it, man.
I'm actually shocked. I'm shocked that you have the Saints this low because I think they're better than the 19th team in the league. I think they might even be a top 12 team. They hung with the Titans in Tennessee and maybe should have beaten them without Alvin Kamara, without their starting quarterback, without Michael Thomas. I was really impressed. I think I would have them higher.
I'm trying to. It gets really hard because so many teams have beaten so many teams. The Giants did beat New Orleans in New Orleans, but at the same time, I've got the Giants at 18, right ahead of New Orleans, respecting that win. They were on a bye, but then I have the Raiders ahead of them, and
who beat the Giants.
The Raiders.
Yeah, right.
So it gets really hard to do this. I think it's a fair point. If there's one team, I just mentioned I thought about moving Philadelphia higher. If there was one team I hated where I put them, it was New Orleans.
Okay.
But there's so many moving parts here. And with the Saints, part of that is quarterback. As much as I defend Trevor Siemian, even with Taysom Hill playing quarterback for this team, I don't love this team's prospects. I actually liked it better with Jameis Winston.
Oh, well, I mean, of course, I like it better with Jameis, but I think this is going to be a playoff team, Elliot. I'd actually be shocked if they don't make the playoffs this year.
Just because you make the playoffs doesn't mean that you're a better team. Just going to point that out. These are not the power standings. Okay. I mentioned the Giants were on a bye. They're at 18. I've got the Raiders at 17. The Raiders got blown out. I think that was a little surprising. We both expected Kansas City to win that game. We could talk about later whether or not this was a we're back game for the Chiefs. What did you make of the Raiders?
That game was way closer than what the final score indicated. If Deshaun Jackson catches that ball at the 10-yard line, if he just goes up the field and scores, we have a 3-point game in the middle of the third quarter. It got out of hand a little bit quicker than I think the Raiders anticipated. I think this feels about right. I'm not going to fight you on it, but that game was not as bad as what it seems.
Did you just think at the time that he got disoriented when he caught the ball?
Yes.
Yeah. I could tell you playing lacrosse, I got disoriented a couple of times. People are whacking you with their stick and you just get turned around. I could see he's tracking the ball. There's a defender right there. I could kind of get into his head, but I felt really, really bad for him.
You would be a guy that would play lacrosse. Just saying that right now.
Oh my gosh. Can we go to 16? Courtney, can we move the rundown?
Sure. I'm just go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I got San Francisco at 16. Now you might say, look, man, they just hammered the Rams. Yeah, they just hammered the Rams. I've also seen the 49ers look really bad several times this season. I need to see more than a week, Marcus, but I was very impressed with their defense.
Having a healthy George Kittle back makes this offense so much more dynamic. We know what Deebo Samuel can do. They still didn't run the ball all that well last night, but the combination of Deebo and Kittle and a little bit of Brandon Ayuk sprinkled in there, I think the 49ers, with a really soft schedule coming up, they could get to 9 or 10 wins. So I agree with the ranking now, but don't be surprised if they shoot up here over the next month.
I thought their defense did a heck of a job.
Yes,
their defense has not been good. I think I told you last week that they missed Robert Saleh, who, of course, now is the head coach of the New York Jets. I'm sure they would like to have him back. Maybe he'd like to go back.
Oh, my gosh.
But maybe they wouldn't like to have him back. They're happy with what they've got. But they have not played great on that side of the ball. I was really impressed last night. We'll see if they can do it again. I had them as a certifiable playoff team. My prediction at the beginning of the year was all 4 NFC West teams were going to make the playoffs. If the one team that may not do it is Seattle. Okay, Cleveland. I wonder if Cleveland can make the playoffs. It's difficult to know what to make of this team, not just from game to game, in game, Marcus. First drive of the game, they go down the field, they get 84 yards, score a touchdown. They gained 133 net yards the rest of the game.
Yeah, I don't like what I'm seeing from Baker right now. I know he's banged up and he's got like 5 different injuries, but if the game isn't perfectly scripted, like it typically is, on the first drive of the game, he's awful. And we've seen too many games now where they score early and then really struggle the rest of the game. It's also the 3rd time this year that the Cleveland Browns have given up at least 40 points in a game. It's got to be concerning for Browns fans.
If I were playing the Browns, I would double team Myles Garrett all the time. Against their offense, I would run blitz. When you run blitz, sometimes you're playing man on the back end. Fine.
Dare him to throw the ball down the field. Yep.
Yes. Make him beat you on intermediate to vertical throws. That's how I would beat the Browns. What you don't want to do is let their offensive line get going, because when their offensive line gets going, they can run the rock on you and it becomes a different game. Dearness Johnson, though, not a bad game. Once again, I've been very impressed with him. Minnesota Vikings, impressive win. We predicted this on our Thursday pod. That's when we pick games. And that was definitely a shill for our product. not sponsored by Cinnamon Toast Crunch, unfortunately. Minnesota Vikings get the win on the road. Marcus, I watching the end of that game, I was like, oh, Kirk Cousins, can I trust him at the end of the game? But you know what? He did it. They did it. It's huge win, maybe saved their season.
Yeah, and the Vikings have been in just about every single game they've played this year. This one, they've looked the best, right? They ran the ball. Justin Jefferson had a monster game. I think the Vikings, they with a fairly easy schedule coming up, I'm going to keep saying this about a couple of these NFC teams, I think they've got a legitimate chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they lost to the Ravens in overtime. They lost to the Cardinals at Arizona. That was at Baltimore. They lost at Arizona on a missed 34-yard field goal, I want to say.
Yep.
They lost at Cincinnati. That game, I think, was a field goal.
Dalvin Cook fumbled in overtime in that game. Yep.
Yes, it's been a parody of errors for them, not parody we have parody in the league, but a different kind of parody. All right, Bengals at 13. They were a bye team. Not a lot for me to say here other than they really have got to get back on track to where they were a few weeks ago. Maybe they weren't as good as we were hyping them to be, but wherever that mean is that mean enough to get them in the playoffs to you?
I don't know. The offensive line is still so worrisome. They've got like a loser leaves town match this week against the Raiders, right? Like they can't afford to lose this game and try to make the playoffs. If they do win, which I think they will, they're right back in the thick of things in the AFC, North crown, because they've got to win already over Baltimore. They got to win over the Steelers. It's a big game for the Bengals.
Did you say loser leaves town?
Yeah.
Okay, it's like a wrestling loser.
It's like a wrestling term, right? You don't remember the old WWE loser leaves town?
But I thought I was the alpha male bully guy who watched wrestling and beat up on nerdy kids.
No, never mind. I don't want to say anything that'll get me in trouble. Go ahead. Let's move on to number 12.
All right. I thought you said loser leaves town. I was like,
loser leaves town.
All right. I know. I thought some people get on their pedestal.
Old Western things. You ever watch those old Western movies where they have a duel?
Yes. High Plains Drifter, one of my favorites. That's old Clint Eastwood movie. It's a great one. Okay. Kansas City Chiefs at 12. This could be the rebound game we've been looking for. I thought Andy Reid's play calling was outstanding in this game.
Yep.
I was getting a little bit tired of the Patrick Mahomes schoolyard ball. I kind of wanted them to get back to more of a scripted approach, which is what it looked like they had the first drive against Green Bay the week before. But overall, do you trust Kansas City yet? Or are you still on a wait and see like I am with San Francisco?
Yeah, I actually trust Kansas City because of one move they made a couple of weeks ago. Trading for Melvin Ingram was massive for a couple of reasons. One, it gives them another veteran edge rusher. But two, it allows Chris Jones to go back to defensive tackle where he's dominant. Like he wrecked that game against the Raiders.
Yes.
They have Derek Nottie and Jaron Reed inside. If their pass rush could continue to play as well as they did in week 10 against the Raiders, they might be the favorites again in the AFC.
Yeah, Jaron Reed had a huge play in that game. And Chris Collinsworth was talking on the broadcast about Chris Jones. He thought they were a little better when he plays inside. I could not agree more. Most quarterbacks, people get excited when they see somebody coming off the edge, bearing down on the quarterback.
It looks cool, right?
It looks cool. But for most quarterbacks, the pressure that bothers them is when you're getting it right up the A gap, right in your face. It's very difficult to beat. The Chargers at number 11, we thought they were going to be more difficult to beat before they played Baltimore a few weeks back. Since then, they've kind of been sputtering, Marcus. They lost to New England. They won a very close game in Philly. Obviously, they got blown out by Baltimore. This game they lost, but we both thought this was a bad matchup for them. Now, one of the reasons we thought it was a bad matchup was how bad their run defense had been. They actually did a really good job in that area. The Vikings receivers beat them, and the Vikings defense beat them more than the running game did.
I'm really worried about this Chargers offense because I still love Justin Herbert. I think he's a phenomenal talent, but I'm not sure Joe Lombardi is doing enough to maximize his ability. So offense just isn't throwing the ball down the field as much as they were early in the season. Mike Williams has basically disappeared he was incredible in the first month of the season.
Yeah.
I think you can make a case the Chargers should be even lower.
He was my breakout player this year. I just thought he was going to have a huge year. Obviously, Mike Williams has been established, but he was a guy I thought was really going to go to the next level, and it sure looked that way early on in the year. Indianapolis Colts early on did not look good at all. They've gotten a lot better. they got off to a fast start in this game. They got a couple big plays. Yep. Jonathan Taylor had over 100 yards in the first half. And I watched this game in the second half, and there was nowhere to run. Jacksonville was doing them no favors. Does that concern you at all? Or did you think, hey, this is going to be a tough game, we shouldn't bail on the Colts?
Yeah, I think the Colts took their foot off the pedal just a little bit in this one. I still think the Colts are playing really well. Carson Wentz is clearly healthier than he was early in the season. They've got a ton of injuries, though, and that's concerning. Quentin Nelson, their all-pro guard, left this game with an injury. I think it's a good team. It's not a team that I think has a chance to win the Super Bowl, though.
But I will say one prediction we had that was wrong. It was mostly you. So I'll say it's mostly you. Only one AFC South team would make the postseason. Tennessee, I think the Colts are going to be there in the postseason.
You do? But I still have my doubts. So they're 5-5 right now.
We'll see. You want to bet a jersey? You want to bet a jersey on it?
Yeah, I'll bet a jersey on it.
All right. Well,
we'll figure it out.
Figure that out on Thursday, which jerseys.
Okay.
Because you definitely need to replace one of yours. Number 9, Baltimore Ravens.
Big fan of your work, though.
Zach Martin's not the one I want to replace. Okay. Baltimore Ravens lost to Miami on Thursday night. We talked when we were doing the Dolphins ranking that the Dolphins kept daring them to beat them. They're doing cover 0, taking huge risks on defense, and Baltimore couldn't do it. And I couldn't figure out if Lamar Jackson did not want to throw the ball down the field. He kept throwing these touch passes. They look completely out of sync on offense. And I don't know whether to put that on coaching, on Lamar, on it being Thursday night weirdness and the team not being ready to play, which technically would be on coaching.
Yep.
What do you say?
I think the biggest thing that I've noticed about this Ravens team is they're not creating chunk plays in the running game.
No.
Over the last couple of years, we were used to these guys having 30, 40-yard runs pretty frequently. And Devontae Freeman and Latavius Murray just don't do it. Le'Veon Bell was actually released today by the Ravens. They need some speed in their backfield. I don't think they're going to get it at any point this year.
That must have been really disappointing for you. You had his fat head, didn't you? Le'Veon Bell's fat head. No,
fat heads are such an old thing. I did. I bought one fat head. It was an old Raider player from the 2000s. Do you want to guess who it was?
A Raider player from the 2000s, and you got his fat head. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to go, wow. Okay. So I have to think about your age, right? Yeah. I'm going to go Lamont Jordan.
Close. I had a Jamarcus Russell fat head. It was like $1 at the Salvation Army. And I bought it and put it in my bedroom. It was great.
Oh my gosh.
It was amazing. Like, those fat heads are supposed to be like blown up. I think that was the actual size of them of Jamarcus Russell, by the way. Took up an entire wall.
That's hurtful. Okay, let's go to number 8.
Also truthful. All right.
Yes. Okay, so are you surprised at how far down I dropped the Rams?
No,
they're number 8.
They deserve it. The last 2 weeks, it's been shocking how unimpressive their offensive line has been. They've just gotten bullied, right?
Oh,
and they have all the playmakers all over the field. They've got a quarterback that I think is really good, a coaching staff that is unbelievable, but the offensive line's a problem. And when they get into some big games, in the NFC, they get into the playoffs, I just wonder if they're going to be able to hold up. It's just not a good look for them right now.
This is what I love about you, bro. For all your condescending remarks about my wardrobe and thinking that your generation knows analytics better and all this stuff, you still realize that football is won at the point of attack more often than not.
Yes.
The two biggest determinants of winning football to me are not the quarterback. They're turnovers, which the quarterback is obviously a part of, and winning at the line of scrimmage, which the quarterback's also a part of that.
It's blocking and tackling, right? That's what football is, blocking and tackling.
And so you could say, well, last night's game, referring to the 49er game, was obvious, but the Rams-Titans game wasn't a blowout. If you watched Rams-Titans, was there ever any doubt that the Titans were winning that game? They just had control of the line of scrimmage. The Rams have been really, really disappointing, and we'll. I'm sure you bailed on the Matt Stafford MVP. I am curious. We should talk about that this week also, who your MVP would be at this point. Let's go to number 7, to the Buffalo Bills. A lot of people had Josh Allen as their MVP. I've been saying for weeks that's ridiculous. But Josh Allen did have a really great game without using his legs in terms of rushing yards in this game, the blowout win that they had. should I not be excited about them blowing out the Jets, or do you
I mean, obviously they did what they're supposed to do. I will still say this about Buffalo. When they play an A+ game, I don't know if anybody in the NFL can beat them.
Right.
We just haven't seen it yet this season. We've seen it against some bad teams for spurts, but not for a whole game against a good team yet. I still think this is the team that I would feel the most comfortable with in the AFC.
I've got to give them a lot of credit, though. Just like I'm looking at their defensive numbers right now. Forget the fact that they're first in points allowed and first in yards allowed. They're second in passing yards allowed, and they're third in rushing yards allowed.
It's incredible.
That's actually more impressive.
A lot of that's due to the quarterbacks they played. They've played some awful quarterbacks, and I'm not sure if you rank them who is the worst of the bunch, but we'll see over the next couple of weeks when they play some better quarterbacks, including Mac Jones twice. Patriots number 6, right?
But in fairness to that, when you have a quarterback that's subpar or a mediocre quarterback, you lean on your running game more, which means Buffalo would have more rushes to stop. So usually, I know it sounds
they've been really good on defense, really good. That's not my concern at all for them. It's the quarterback. Honestly, it's the biggest issue.
It just defies logic to say, hey, it's more impressive to be second and third in pass and run defense than being first overall, but it really is, because usually you don't see that. New England Patriots, speaking of defense, they've allowed under 10 points now, I think 3 times this year. They've allowed under 20, I think 6 times total. We thought their defense was going to be good coming to the year. We both thought they would probably be a top 5 unit. I think the defense is even exceeding those expectations. And I'm talking about the defense. I've already, when we did the quarterback redraft, I drafted Mac Jones very, very high. I've always liked him, but to me, the defense is the heart of this football team.
I agree with you, but I also say they got Trent Brown, the right tackle, back this week, who's basically missed the last 2 months. When he is on the field, he might be the best right tackle in football, and they can absolutely maul teams at the point of attack. Ramondre Stevenson had 100 rushing yards in this game. They were blowing Cleveland off the line of scrimmage. I think the Patriots have that look, Elliot, as a team that's going to go deep into the playoffs. I think Bill Belichick really likes this squad.
You know, it's amazing to me with right tackle how it's finally getting the respect it deserves. See, it used to be obviously left tackle, and then right guard was really important when teams ran the ball more. But right tackle, when you have so many quarterbacks, teams want to play young quarterbacks. They're cheaper. They don't always see that front side pressure. You need to have a really good right tackle. We've talked about before. I don't know if you talked about it on Locked On that the Cowboys got better when Doug Free became a better player at right tackle for them. Speaking of the Dallas Cowboys, they're at number 5. I didn't go nuts and move them crazy up, but I didn't go nuts last week and move them crazy down when they lost. Marcus, I think they're a top 5 team in the NFL because they have a really explosive offense. They have a defense that can get takeaways, but you can't always trust. Their special team still concerns me. That's why they're not closer to 1.
And that's fair. I think there's still some holes in this team, but I will say we are getting very close to the Cowboys having their full starting offensive line back for the first time since midway of the 2019 season. So it's getting close. Tyron Smith may be coming back this week against the Chiefs. DeMarcus Lawrence, Neville Gallimore, 2 important defensive linemen coming back maybe around Thanksgiving. Cowboys are starting to play really, really good football, and I think they are a legitimate Super Bowl contender.
Give me a random Cowboys offensive lineman.
Mark Tuinei.
Oh, I thought you were going to go Mark Colombo.
That's a good one.
Darn it. How about Leonard Davis, former Cardinal? Now, that's a professional segue. Cardinals at number 4. Leonard Davis was a huge guard, man. That guy was huge.
380?
Didn't he play bass?
Yeah, him, Doug Free, Corey Proctor were all in a band together. It's great.
I can't remember if he played bass or not, though.
He seems like a bass, right?
He does. So the Cardinals I dropped extensively, or maybe not extensively is not really the word. What would be that? Precipitous drop? Yeah. So I know that the Cardinals play with some backups, but they got handled in this game. And I had a lot of people respond to me saying that the Cardinals are a great team. One of the people on Twitter that responded said, you know, if AJ Green doesn't shut off the controller there, Green Bay bailed Arizona out in that game with coaching, and Green Bay was playing without all the receivers. So I can't hear that argument. The Cardinals should have lost to Minnesota.
One game.
Hold on, they should have lost to Minnesota. They could have very, very easily lost to the 49ers that played Trey Lance. That was a home game. I'm not saying the Cardinals are not a good team. I'm saying they're not a great team, regardless of the record.
And you're right. But can I say the same thing about the Packers, who should have lost to the Bengals about 7 different times if the Bengals just make a kick, or if they should have lost to the 49ers if they just hold the ball a little bit more?
I just reeled you in, home
I'm just saying, I think the Cardinals are still the second best team in the league. I wouldn't demote them this much because they lost a game on the road without their quarterback and the receiver. We've seen them beat a pretty decent team of the 49ers just a week ago without those guys. So I would have them at 2 at worst. So there you go. Okay. That's our big fight.
But I reeled you in because you in your argument, you're saying that Green Bay isn't great either, which goes to my whole point at the top of this podcast, which are there are no great teams in the league right now. By the way, the Cardinals' run defense gave up almost $170 to the Panthers. Their run defense is so. I'll just say that, but we'll see on that.
I just disagree with the next team that you have higher than them. I will say that.
And I really, really debated this one. I really debated it. And here's the thing. Tampa Bay is also injured, just like Arizona is. It's not the quarterback position. I get it. I don't think Arizona would have gone to Washington this week and won either. I thought it was a bad matchup for Tampa Bay. They're going to get healthier. And they also, it's not like Tampa Bay got blown out. They just couldn't stop Washington at the very end of the game. Arizona got absolutely blown out. Now, I recognize that there's a difference between not having, Godwin and Brown totally healthy and having Gronk and not having Kyler Murray. I get that. I'm just saying that to me, I didn't want to punish Tampa Bay too bad for this loss.
It's not just this loss, though. They lost to the Saints 2 weeks ago, and that one was a worse loss. So I think the combination of those two games would have me putting Arizona higher because when Kyler Murray has played, they've only lost one game, and it was a game that they probably should have won. They had the ball on the 1 yard line. I just think they're a better team right now.
That's a fair point. One thing I'll say, though, New Orleans has Tampa Bay's number. They do. And
of course.
I could see Tampa Bay literally going 15-2 and losing 2. Obviously, that's not going to happen this year. But my point, I'm just making a dumb point that I remember last year on Sunday Night Football, the Saints absolutely destroyed the Bucs. That might have been the Bucs' last loss of the season last year, and it wasn't even close. It was probably the worst game I've ever seen a Tom Brady team play. All right, number 2, a team that's playing great, Tennessee Titans. Yes, they eked it out over the Saints, according to Marcus, the Saints I should have ranked higher. The Titans are playing without their best player. They have a relatively new guy back there that's 36 years old. I actually think he will help that team. It's hard not to like the way the Titans are playing as a team, and it really speaks to your praise a couple of weeks ago of Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, Vrabel's just a really good coach. The thing that I noticed in this game and over the last couple of weeks is D'Amico Autry and Jeffrey Simmons are the best defensive tackle combination in the NFL right now. They're just beating up dudes inside. And then you have Harold Landry on the outside, just winning every one-on-one matchup. And you see the vision that the Titans had with those guys inside, with Dupree and Landry on the outside. If they can get pressure with their front four, they don't necessarily need to have the best cornerbacks in the world to have success. So I really like this formula for the Titans. And if Derrick Henry can come back for the playoffs, I know that's a big ask considering the foot injury he has, and Julio Jones, if he can come back, it's a really, really good team. And I'm perfectly fine with them being here at number 2.
I think a couple things with Tennessee. One, they're doing a lot better in the secondary than I thought they would do. I know they're getting a lot of help, Marcus, from the pass rush, but they are holding the fort. I think they need more production from wide receiver group outside of A.J. Brown.
I agree with you. Or a tight end. Anthony Fursker needs to be more productive in that way.
Yeah. Let me put it more succinctly. They need more help outside. It's that simple on offense than they're getting right now. So that could be an Achilles heel for them. I would love it if Henry could come back. I hate that he got hurt. Anyway, they're my number 2 team. My number 1 team is the same for the second week in a row. Green Bay's defense was absolutely outstanding against Kansas City. They were outstanding again against Seattle, and they won a game on their running backs and their defense. And that's why I like Green Bay. Marcus, when we get into the postseason, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play like Aaron Rodgers, they can still win.
Yeah, 13 combined points against Mahomes and Russell Wilson. Not bad. If they get the
No.
number 1 seed in the NFC, I really don't see anybody going to Lambeau and beating them with how good Rodgers plays in the cold, with that defense, with that rushing attack. It's the best team in the NFL right now.
I love it when they get Dylan going. Boy, he and Adam Jones are just they are so good. I just wonder with Aaron Rodgers, if he turns it on. Sometimes when a quarterback gets hot and the offense gets going, the defense lets up a little bit. If this defense doesn't let up and they play as if they've got a backup quarterback in there, I think this team is going to be really hard to beat by anybody. And if Tennessee's going to beat them, they're going to have Derrick Henry to do it, in my mind.
What team in the NFC?
That'd be a good Super Bowl.
Yeah. What team in the NFC matches up the best against the Packers?
Boy, I like the Bucs still.
I do too.
I love what they can do with Fournette, for example. And I liked the Gio Bernard acquisition. It's not just about their receivers, their tight end. And the thing with Gronk that people have to remember, it's too bad we're so stat heavy all the time. And Gronk may not be the same blocker he used to be, but he gives you so much versatility on offense when he can inline block, see something in a defensive alignment, make a side adjustment with Tom Brady, and you get a touchdown.
Yep.
It just, in red zone scoring, when we get into the postseason, is a lot more important than it is in the regular season. It becomes everything. So that and turnovers, obviously. So I like Tampa Bay of the other teams. Of the AFC teams, there's nobody unless Buffalo plays its peak game like you're talking about.
Yep, I agree.
But they have to play their peak game.
Yes.
And I'm saying Green Bay does not have to play their peak game to win.
I agree.
That's the issue. So with that, I will give you, this has been a long podcast. No Harrison Hellpack. I know what kind of hack you wanted me to give this week.
I want a dating hack later in the week. We'll get one. Don't worry. Tune into the Friday show.
You get final word though.
It seems like we're on a collision course for the Packers and the Cowboys to meet in the playoffs. And wouldn't that be fun? Aaron Rodgers against Mike McCarthy, probably in Lambeau Field. Seems almost too good to be true, but I think those might be the two best teams in the NFC right now, Elliot.
Yeah, Packers and Cowboys, they've met in 66, 67, 82, 93, 94, 95. They met in 2014. They met in 2016. Quite a legacy there between those two teams. Great uni matchup. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff. Okay, I think that's good enough for today. This is a long but informative podcast. We got a little bit of everything in there. We will see you guys on Thursday. You can always follow Marcus at Marcus
Wednesday.
Mosher.
We're doing a show tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. We're doing it tomorrow. I forgot.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me. I'll make sure to see if I have another fraternity sweater. Just kidding. Don't be a jerk. I'm at Harrison NFL. We'll see y'all later.
Bye, guys.